This video is brought to you by CuriosityStream. What's up, Wisecrack? Michael here. I don't know about you, but my favorite part about Christmas is the forced pressure to spend money on gifts for people I don't care about, to bring to family gatherings that often make me consider moving to a desolate research station in Antarctica. Not really, but one thing I do love about the holidays is all the new movies that drop on December 25th. So I was bummed when we only got 2 new well-publicized options this year. One was some weird parable about not wishing for more wishes that presumably took place in the Cats extended universe, and the other deals with the life, afterlife, and pre-life of a jazz musician named Joe. Today, I want to take a look at the latter film, Pixar's Soul. The film clearly sets out to ask some all-important questions about the meaning of life, so allow me to ask an equally important question. Does the movie actually offer any smart answers? Let's find out in this Wisecrack edition on Soul, Deep or Dumb. And as always, spoilers ahead. But before we get into it, I want to give a shout out to this week's sponsor, CuriosityStream. CuriosityStream has thousands of streamable documentaries and nonfiction TV shows on history, nature, science, food, technology, travel, and more. They feature shows from some of your favorite smart channels, while also hosting award-winning exclusives and Curiosity originals. Right now, I'm making my way through all of their featured documentaries, and one of my favorites has been The Secret World of Lego. The documentary gives insights into a notoriously secretive company that is one of the most popular toy makers in the world. With such a huge community, it's interesting to learn about their history and hear from people who are integral to the company. If that interests you, then you should definitely check it out. CuriosityStream is available on most devices, so you can watch it anywhere, anytime. If you click the link in the description or go to curiositystream.com/wisecrack right now and use code WISECRACK, you can get a whole year for just $14.99. You can cancel at any time, so what's the risk? Check it out by clicking the link below, and now, back to the show. So before we dive into the great abyss of existence, let's do a quick recap. Soul is the story of Joe, a middle school music teacher in New York who moonlights as a jazz pianist. His dream is to make his living performing, but he hasn't gotten his big break. But then a former student calls to offer him a last-minute opportunity to play with a famous saxophonist. Joe crushes the audition and lands the gig.
First show's at 9, sound check's at 7. We'll see how you do.
He's walking on sunshine until he's walking over an open manhole, and then he's walking towards a non-denominational version of the pearly gates. The rest of the film revolves around Joe's various attempts to get back to Earth in time for his show. All the while, he's unofficially mentoring a soul named 22 who's been unsuccessfully trying to earn an Earth badge, i.e. the right to become human for thousands of years.
The world doesn't revolve around you, 22!
Along the way, Joe becomes a cat, meets some cosmic hippies, dies a couple more times, and eventually overcomes some pretty big existential obstacles. So does Joe's journey teach us anything about life, existence, or why I will always regret giving up on my high school garage band? Let's jump into the abyss and see. One of the key themes of life for fledgling souls in the great before is that they need to find their spark before they're ready to fly down to Earth and become human. For most of the film, Joe equates the spark with the sort of passion one can turn into a career, rather than the spark you feel when you discover a double rainbow and definitely aren't on mushrooms.
Oh my God, it's a double rainbow all the way.
Now, Joe's view kind of makes sense given our society, which places so much emphasis on building a successful career doing what you love. But here's the question. Does the film use Joe's obsession to show how the logic of do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life might be, well, kind of stupid? Joe's life revolves around the idea that if he could just make his living as a musician, he would be happy. So when he gets offered a full-time teaching job with a salary and benefits, he interprets this as a failure rather than as an amazing opportunity, much to his mother's dismay.
You can't eat dreams for breakfast.
And that's why the stakes for his audition are so high. In his mind, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actualize his dreams of jazz stardom. But in a series of events that Alanis Morissette would call ironic, he nails the audition and then dies on his walk home. So what does Joe learn from this? Not much. He carries this do what you love philosophy into death as he tries to help 22 find her spark, which he assumes means her passion, the thing that she should professionally pursue. And this mindset affects the way Joe sees everyone. When he visits his barber, Dez, he tells 22 that
This guy was born to be a barber.
but we quickly learn that Dez's real dream was to be a veterinarian. After his daughter got sick though, he needed money to take care of her, and barber school was cheaper than veterinary school. But he has a good attitude about it and has found joy in the fact that his work allows him to make a living chatting with all types of interesting people.
I'm happy as a clam, my man. Not everyone can be Charles Drew inventing blood transfusions.
This is a nice counter to Joe's limiting perspective, that happiness only comes when your passion and profession are perfectly aligned. Of course, the suggestion seems to low-key be settle for whatever job you can get and find a way to be happy, which is maybe not the most inspirational.
2, 3, I see you, Caleb.
Besides, Dez didn't give up his dream of becoming a veterinarian just because. He did it because of extenuating social and economic circumstances that were completely beyond his control. All that aside, the damaging ramifications of the do what you love mentality have similarly been explored by a host of recent writers. In her book, Can't Even: How Millennials Became the Burnout Generation, writer Anne Helen Peterson says, the rhetoric of do what you love and you'll never work another day in your life is a burnout trap. By cloaking the labor in the language of passion, we're prevented from thinking of what we do as what it is, a job, not the entirety of our lives. Of course, Joe stands in stark contrast to this. His whole mission is to turn his passion into his career. And later in the film, we have some hints that Joe has been avoiding other aspects of his life in pursuit of that career.
I'm telling you, Joe, you really should call Lisa again.
I don't really have time for a relationship right now.
In this way, he's hardly an outlier. As Mia Tokumitsu, author of Do What You Love, writes, work is held up as something that is more revelatory about your character than the interest you have, or the way you care about other people or care for other people. This describes Joe's worldview to a T. In his striving to be all he can be as a musician, he's lost sight of what actually makes life meaningful. It's not that jazz is bad, or he needs to give up his passion. Rather, that life is about so much more. Unable to see this, Joe spreads his misguided notion, telling 22 that she needs to find a specific interest to earn her Earth badge.
Croissants, cakes, baking could be your spark.
Yeah.
Here, he conflates the spark for life with the passion for a career. Of course, the film eventually proves him and our broader cultural logic to be wrong.
A spark isn't a soul's purpose. Oh, you mentors and your passions, your purposes, your meanings of life. So basic.
So, pretty deep? Well, maybe. The film's conclusion seems to suggest that Joe realized that searching for meaning in his work would never leave him feeling fulfilled. Instead, in reflecting on his time with 22, he realizes that much of what makes life worth living are the people, places, and things that bring us simple joy. What's the point of landing your dream job if you can't enjoy a lovely autumn day or a walk around town with a friend? Which we think means that Joe is going to be able to head back to Earth and accept his job as a teacher, knowing that his career isn't the end-all be-all for his happiness. Or maybe the movie is just telling us that we should accept our lot in life even if our job treats us like crap because leaves are pretty, which would suck. Since we're not totally sure how to read these final moments, we're hesitant to make a conclusive call, but since avoiding a verdict would make me a coward and a liar, I'll say not super deep, but also not too dumb, unless we're wrong, in which case I take it all back and beg forgiveness. Regardless, there's another way to view the movie, through the eyes of dead German philosophers. See, nestled within all this do-what-you-love business is another simple message. Maintaining a narrow-minded view of what life can and should be will lead you to miss out on lots of cool stuff. I mean, the world is full of beautiful things, from the simple joy of a slice, to the miracles of nature, to all those things combined in Pizza Rat. Only in New York. Now, this one will take some explaining, but I think the film might accidentally be making the approximate point of one Martin Heidegger, philosopher and author of the criminally dense and needlessly wordy Being and Time. Here's Heidegger's take, very condensed. A defining feature of our existence is thrownness, as in we're literally thrown into the world with no choice or control over where we land. Like this. But you're getting pushed over the edge by the weird line people. But if the connection were just, isn't the concept of thrownness exactly like the total confusion the characters experience in this colorful animation, our argument would be pretty flimsy. But rest assured, I was forced to read the whole book in a week during grad school, and there's more to it. For Heidegger, being thrown into existence means that we don't really have a starting point. We're just sort of there. And because of that, our existence is and feels kind of arbitrary. However, being thrown into existence also gives us freedom, which is cool and all, but it also means we're responsible for our own lives. And this mix of freedom and responsibility makes us anxious, as we can get freaked out by all the possibilities and retreat into ourselves, hiding from the world. Or we can open ourselves up to existence and all the possibilities it offers. Put simply, if I were to view my surroundings, my friends and family, solely as means to the end of furthering my jazz career, I wouldn't really get to sit down, open up to the world, and appreciate how dope trees and chewing gum and pizza rats are. For much of the film, 22 and Joe are closed off like this. By viewing passion solely as means to get your Earth badge, 22 is unable to experience the world in a healthy way and see all the possibilities. In Joe's case, a singular focus on his career often obscures the greater beauty inherent in his life. For Heidegger, opening and closing ourselves off to the world has a lot to do with what he called moods, which are how we experience existence. We can relate to it through fear, boredom, or joy. Something we see in 22 as she realizes that maybe Earth isn't the trash fire she thought it was. It's gonna be a rough journey for her once she becomes a human and realizes that she's now more kindling for the orb-shaped trash fire we all live on. Maybe the best case for this movie is accidentally super philosophical is this moment. After Joe's gig when he feels empty and tells Dorothea about it. In response, she tells a story about a young fish who was looking for the ocean.
The ocean, says the older fish. That's what you're in right now. This, says the young fish, this is water. What I want is the ocean.
In a sense, Joe has closed himself off from existence, the ocean in the metaphor, by his preoccupation with the immediate water around him. He's limited his perspective so much that he hasn't considered that happiness and meaning might exist off stage. So while it might not have been intentional, though who knows, maybe Pixar has a full room of dusty old German philosophy books, this part of the film is actually pretty deep. Joe's journey isn't just about figuring out what sort of job he wants, but rather, it's one that leads to an interrogation about the very nature of existence. It's heavy stuff. And while in the film, Joe has some extra lives he inherited from his brief stint as a cat, philosophers like Heidegger emphasize that our lives are finite. And if we're not going to live forever, reckoning with these existential questions really matters if we want to live an authentic life. So yeah, pretty deep. Finally, let's consider a theme that's at play throughout the whole film. Jazz, or as 22 refers to it,
You were jazzing.
Okay, jazz.
rather than a mere excuse to fill the movie with amazing music, jazz can be understood as a conceptual motif that brings the whole thing together. Unlike most music you might see at a concert, when those existed, jazz places a strong emphasis on improvisation. And sure, anyone who has seen a guitar solo may have experienced musical improv, but jazz musicians famously make a point of winging it over complicated chord changes. Kind of like when Joe is thrown into his audition. In this way, jazz is more like the experience of human existence than pop music. Musicians are free to explore where the music takes them, rather than strictly following sheet music. So when 22 refers to her experience of being human as jazzin', it's not just a cute misuse of a term, but an apt analogy for existing in the world. And of course, it makes sense that a film exploring existential themes would use jazz as its unifying motif. Much like how jazz is a reaction to stuffy musical conventions, existentialism is a reaction against the rigid structure of modern philosophy, and a way of thinking that prioritizes the dynamic nature of existence over the fixed nature of ideas and concepts. And hey, more than one academic thinks jazz and Heidegger form an odd alliance. This all brings us back to our original question. Is soul deep or dumb? When the movie is down on earth trying to teach us that it doesn't matter if we get our dream job as long as we learn to make the most of it, without acknowledging the real problems with the logic of do what you love, it gets a little dumb. But when we jump up to the great before, the film has a lot to say about the anxieties inherent to human existence, and sheds light on the ways in which taking hold of our freedom can be a struggle. And by bringing it all together under the motif of jazz improvisation, Soul has a lot to say about how the philosophy of jazz is really a philosophy for the existential improvisation of life. So final score, deepish, and absolutely worth a watch. But what do you guys think? Should Joe have stayed a cat forever and taken advantage of all the sunspots in his apartment? Let us know what you think in the comments. Big thanks to our patrons for all your support. Hit that subscribe button like you're coming in perfectly as the band plays a C minor 9, and don't forget to ring that bell. As always, thanks for watching. Later.